Hello, I'm Tom Ferguson, and welcome to The Fundamental Molecule. This show explores the intersection of water, technology, and entrepreneurship. Each week, I interview innovators, experts, entrepreneurs, and investors in the world of water, helping us understand where this trillion-dollar industry is headed. These are the stories of the people building the future of the world's most valuable and fundamental resource.
Disclaimer. Tom Ferguson is the managing partner of Virgin Island Ventures. All opinions expressed by Tom and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Virgin Island Ventures. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be viewed as investment advice or relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.
Everybody remembers their first. When I was with Imagine H2O, I had the great fortune to meet Greg Floyd, who needed a small check for an early prototype of their showerhead, which was crucially different from the litany of showerheads that were coming out at the time. They were all neon and internal drives and control panels and all this crap that totally overlooked that when people are having a shower, they want one thing and one thing only: plentiful, usually hot water to help them get clean and usually relax. Do not introduce complexity or unreliability into this equation. Greg and his team really got it. And as importantly, had identified a gigantic market where the value prop of their shower, and I'm leaving the explanation of that to him, really hits. Showers are a giant pain in the ass for hotels. And ShowerStream essentially deletes the source of a whole lot of trouble. They're now at 400 plus live devices across 5 hotel chains, 150,000 showers taken with 0 complaints, paybacks measured in weeks. It's an unusual story in an overlooked market, the kind I love. And as you will hear, Greg has built deliberately into a fascinating position. Please enjoy my conversation with Greg Floyd. Greg Floyd, how unbelievably nice to see you.
Tom Ferguson, it's been a while. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, Greg, I've been a big fan for a long time. Obviously, you were the first check that I wrote into a water company back in 2018, I believe it was.
I could never forget.
Yeah, so fun. I know exactly where I was, on Kearny Street in San Francisco, as we sort of decided to get you over your first hump. And it's been so fun to watch you work and to pull the solution into the light. Before we get to the solution, I want you to start in a very specific place. I want you to walk us through how people behave with their shower in their hotels, because I think it is illuminating.
You would be astounded. So we started talking to hotel owners, very early on. And one thing I learned is they love telling anyone that'll listen about all of the wild antics their guests get into in their guest rooms. You can imagine this is a key to the hotelier business, is the maintenance and upkeep of these rooms. So any guest that goes in and trashes it like a rock star or runs the shower for 5 days immediately becomes, an anecdote that these hotel owners share with themselves and anyone that will listen.
What are they doing? It's like zero in on the bathroom, right? And specifically, you mentioned like people leave their showers on for 5 days. That sounds like hyperbole, but mystifyingly, it is. Run us through what's actually going on, because it's kind of the core of what you're solving.
There's 2 types of, let's say excessive bathroom use that causes damage in these hotel rooms. One is just kind of the normal everyday, and 2 would be the excessive. So just starting with the everyday, if you imagine a 300-room hotel, an economy hotel, just the amount of wet area per square footage in the building is really high. And these buildings have got such wonderful insulation and this type of thing at this point that moisture has nowhere to go. Just a typical shower, on a whole floor at 8 or 9 a.m. in an economy hotel can get highly humid, muggy indoors. That's the typical use, but the excessive use is always the more fun anecdotally. And the way I like to frame this is, if you think about, crime in the society, it's a really small percentage of people that tend to do all the crime in a particular population. And it turns out it's the same in hotel bathrooms. There's a small number of guests that tend to do the most offensive behavior. So some of these anecdotes I know you want me to get to, we have guests that will run their shower all night long, for 2, 3, 4 days. This is if they've got a partner that snores, or to block out the noise from the street, they'll use their shower as like a white noise machine. Yeah, it's bad. We have other guests that rather than using, I guess, the indoor humidifier they might use at home, they'll run their shower for their entire stay, an entire week. They'll just leave the shower running for some indoor humidity reasons that have to do with health and stuff that I don't really understand. These types of behaviors happen about 1 out of every 100 showers, these excessive, like 4 hours or longer. We have guests keeping their showers, 1% of bathers keep their shower on for 4 hours or longer. And if you've got a 1,000-room hotel, that's happening every day. 1 out of 100 showers last 4 hours or longer in a hotel. And that data does not translate to a residential shower use. That's one of the things that we've learned. You can imagine if you go into your wife's shower or your own shower and run it for 4 hours at full steam with the doors closed, that bathroom is never going to look or smell the same. You're going to get warped. You're going to get, electrical fixtures that are buzzing out on you. And worst of all, you're going to get mold and mildew. And that mold and mildew becomes extremely expensive to repair. And, at hotels, pervasive mold, mildew, and indoor humidity is basically number one driver of guest dissatisfaction. No one wants to stay in a dank, nasty hotel.
It's a really helpful segue. So translate this into the so what on behalf of the hotelier. For example, with all of this crazy, to use a technical term, crazy ass behavior that's going on in hotel rooms, well, how does this show up in the life of the hotelier? What does this mean for?
I think if you're a hotelier, your number one priority really is guest satisfaction. You want your guests happy, leaving good reviews, and returning to your hotel. So they provide water to their guests because as humans, we need water. I know you know this, and all of the guests on this podcast get deep into the fundamental molecule, of course. That's the first thing on every hotelier's mind, their guest happiness. I would say the second is the maintenance of their property. If you're a hotel owner, this type of shower behavior that I've described really hits you in two ways. One is in your utility bill, and two is in your maintenance operational cost, which is by far, the biggest cost driver in the hotel industry for a couple of centuries now. So to start on the utility side, shower water is hot water. That means it's heated by a hot water heater, which is typically powered in the hotel industry by natural gas. So there's an energy component here. For example, a hotel guest that ran his shower for 5 days actually racked up more in utility costs in terms of water, the energy to heat that water, and then the sewer costs, because this isn't like an outdoor sprinkler. Shower water has to go down the drain, and these hotels have to pay a drainage cost as well. But anyway, that guest who ran his shower for 5 days racked up more in utility bills for the hotel than the hotel charged him for his nightly rate. So the utility cost is a very reliable way that we've learned with our product to measure exactly per drop of water how much energy is in that water, how much dollar cost is in that water that we're actually saving at the shower head for the hotel with our product. The second way this matters for our hotel owners, again, is in their property maintenance. Like I mentioned before, a hotel owner would rather like a rock band come and just trash out the room and turn over the coffee table and maybe throw the TV or make a lot of noise one night or something, as opposed to someone run their shower for 5 days, because the damage that causes is extremely difficult to repair. It's indoor humidity damage. So what are you going to do? Replace all the drywall? You call out the mold specialist or whatever. It's extremely expensive damage that the indoor humidity causes. And it's very difficult for the maintenance team at any hotel property to recover once a room has been totally waterlogged.
But it goes beyond that, right? Especially if it turns into a flood. One of the things that always struck me was the fundamental economics of someone leaves their towels in the shower and then turns the shower on, which amazingly happens, right? And then floods the bathroom. You're not only putting that room out of action and all the remediation costs, you've got the room below it and the ones either side that you have to take out of action in order to create this kind of remediation. It's just this cascading expense effect that is not only remediation cost, but it's also, you're not earning any money from that room. So it's the foregone room cost as well as the cost and the giant pain in the ass. I've always found it so enormously striking. So from there, what are you building to allay this? How are you, quite literally choking this off at the source?
Well, we've built a smart shower head. It's just a shower head. Well, it's a little bit more, but if you're a hotel owner, it installs just like a normal shower head. If you're a hotel guest, it looks just like a shower head. And crucially for hotel guests, it's a luxury rainfall shower head, which that may not sound like a massive innovation. We've had luxury rainfall shower heads around for a while, but not at economy hotels. Economy hotels have been using 1.8 gallon per minute low flow shower heads that have been around from the 80s and 90s. A luxury rainfall experience for an economy hotel guest is actually quite a luxury and a great guest satisfaction driver. So anyway, what we're building is called ShowerStream. It's a smart shower head that helps hotels save water, energy, and ultimately utility cost, maintenance cost, and improve guest satisfaction at their properties.
How did you find out about this? This is a pain point that we love because it's something that very few people would consider. But there are 8 billion shower heads on the planet. Or maybe it's more than that now. I have no idea.
It's a massive market. There's actually more daily active shower head users than iPhone and Android daily active users combined. Almost everyone showers almost every day. And then properties like hotels and vacation rentals and others, there's more than one shower head per capita. So yes, it's a massive market. But to answer your question, how did I find out about this? Well, Tom, how far back do we want to go?
I'm just interested in how the light bulb came on, that this was what Greg Floyd, we're going to go and turn your entrepreneurial towards.
I would say through basic robotic tinkering, I was grinding away as a software engineer in the semiconductor industry. And I built a alarm clock for myself on my own home shower, where essentially when my normal alarm clock went off, my shower would come on automatically and warm up, which would lure my lazy ass out of bed so that I didn't have to wait for it to warm up and shiver. I built this contraption and showed some of my friends about it. Some of them are smarter than me. They work at Apple and some successful entrepreneurs as well. And they said, oh, this is brilliant. You need to go talk to so-and-so or so-and-so. This is the way it should be. And we actually didn't start with hotels. We started talking to multifamily apartment owners. We talked to cruise ships. We talked to gyms. And we really got a lot of demand from a lot of different areas. But it wasn't until we went and talked to our first economy hotel owner. I still remember like it was yesterday, an owner of 4 properties. And we showed him a picture of my prototype. It looked terrible, but we also had added some value propositions we thought might be interesting for him. And he said, could this prevent my guests from steaming the wrinkles out of their clothes using my showers? I said, yes, it can. And that's how it started, and he said, if it could do that, and if it can do these other things you're saying, not only would I buy it, I know 10 other hotel owners who would buy one also. I could take you to the AHLA conference and set up a booth, and we would have a line of buyers around the door for you in no time. And sure enough, we didn't just take his word for it. We went and talked to more hotel owners. We started integrating this value prop that, hey, it could prevent your guests from running the shower forever as white noise or steaming the wrinkles. It just seemed to work. It just really resonated with hotel owners. And from that moment on, I think it gave us the line in the sand and the motivating drive to do what is really hard and challenging and high risk, which is start a water hardware startup.
I need you to go a layer deeper on exactly what the device does. You said it's a smart shower head. It's not like something you can just pull off and then it's going to have like neons and all the rest of this stuff. And there's going to be apps and controls and all of this crap that nobody wants, because when they're having a shower, what they want is their experience not to be infringed upon by literally anything, especially not something that can break. So what is it that you actually do? How do you save the money, the energy, the sewerage for a hotel? What is the physical intervention?
The way the device works is you can think of it like, a touchless faucet or a motion activated faucet, but for the shower. It works very simply. If you're someone who doesn't run your shower for 5 hours, or if you're someone who just gets in, you're disrobed, you're ready to go, we're not going to cut the flow on you at all. You're going to have a high flow luxury experience that's better than 99% of the low flow shower heads that are on the market today. But, if you turn on your shower and while it's warming up, you take an extra 2-3 minutes to brush your teeth, then after the water is warm, ShowerStream can detect, our shower head can detect once the water is warm. If you're not in the shower, then it will cut the flow to a trickle. There's like a 1% trickle that provides like an audible and visual indicator to the hotel guest that your shower's still warm and waiting for you. And all you have to do is step on the bath mat or touch the shower curtain or open the shower door, and the water will resume at full speed automatically. And once you get in and bathe, it stays on, of course, the whole time. We're not cutting the water on anybody.
So what are the savings? I mean, what are you looking at on a per hotel room? And maybe you mentioned a 300-room hotel. How does this show up? Once you have a full installation of shower stream, like how does the value proposition show up?
I think the simplest way to explain this is there was existing literature that we found by Lutz et al. At Lawrence Berkeley that had discovered 20% shower waste in a residential, non-hotel setting. We went to market with that value proposition that if you're a hotel, we can save you 20% of your shower utility bills. And this was a very valuable value proposition for these hotels because their shower is the number 2 utility hog behind the HVAC. And in some regions, it's the number 1 to heat this water and all of that. We eventually got a military contract. And so we were able to do a 6-month-long pilot at a military location with like a murderer's row of Pentagon utility experts and data scientists and stuff like this. And we ended up saving 46%. So more than double the original Lutz hypothesis. We've learned a lot along the way. You know, the original research, you can imagine, is maybe not as hot as some other areas like nuclear physics or something. So domestic shower water use, we've got Jim Lutz, who's a legend in the field, and maybe not too many others. So we found ourselves here over the last few years doing the cutting edge research in this domain. We were taken aback with our 46% savings. Of course, the first thing we thought is something must be wrong. It must be a bug.
But it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. We validated it inside and out, upside down and backwards. And a lot of it is because of some of these anecdotes that I was telling you at the beginning. We didn't learn that on day one. I'm not an entrepreneur who grew up in the hotel industry. I came from tech. We've learned all of these different statistical, behavioral use cases and done the data science. We basically measure our device. Our shower head has sensors on board. So we're able to measure every single drop of water that goes through the shower head and the temperature of that water at 2-second timestamps. So using that granular data, we're able to really nail down and prove these numbers.
It's absolutely fascinating. So just bring us completely up to date. Like, where are you now? And then I want to get into kind of the hardware creation story because you've had a really fascinating journey on that side. Where are you now? What's going on?
Last year, at the end of last year, we finished our first year-long pilot with a major hotel brand, a very large one, with the corporate headquarters and also with the US military. So we had 2 year-long products. Those pilots ended at the end of the year. And since then, we've expanded to 5 locations. So we've gone from 1 pilot location to 5. We're starting our commercial rollout now in the last quarter and a half. We've been able to raise another round of funding, which we're really grateful for that. Now we're knee deep in hiring and starting up our next production run, which will hopefully lead into some continuous manufacturing and just scaling the product.
Hardware in the real world is really hard, right? You've got installation, reliability, water and electronics living in the same place. This is really quite tricky engineering. Walk us through what that reality was like, the sort of the world of iteration. What was the hardest or toughest engineering lesson that you had to learn?
From a technical perspective, it turns out that we had 2 serious challenges. One is the sensor technology. If you've ever used the occupancy sensor technology to determine if a guest is present in the shower or not and bathing, if you've ever used the touchless faucets at an airport bathroom, you know how terrible they are. You kind of have to wave your hands forever. They're finicky. Yeah. And if you think about it, there's an entire touchless bathroom industry, right? It's been around for decades. There's touchless toilets, there's touchless faucets, touchless sinks, touchless towel and soap dispensers. It's dominated by kitchen and bath brands that I'm sure you've heard of. We were asking, why hasn't brand X that you've heard of already built this thing, if there's an entire touchless industry? And it turns out really that detecting the presence of a human bather in a shower is really an AI complete problem. An example of another AI complete problem essentially is like the Roomba, the vacuum cleaner that has to, navigate the carpet. That was an extremely challenging, difficult problem for that team as well. It took them quite a few years. We thought we were going to build one in 3 months. And we did, sure enough. I mean, in the first 3 months back then in 2018, we built, in fact, a whole hotel's worth of motion sensitive shower heads using off the shelf, commercially available occupancy sensor technology commonly found in the kitchen and bath industry. And it didn't work. In a shower, the sensor has to be perfect. It can't cut off on a guest. It has to work every single time. So that was challenge one. And then challenge two was all of this data science around proving the savings. There's a reason that economy hotels have really bad shower heads. It's because they don't cost very much. If we're going to be able to build this luxury, high-tech shower head and offer it to economy hotels, economically, the device has to more than pay for itself. The way in which it pays for itself, it has to be pretty much unimpeachable. It can't be some kind of like marketing, you'll see the value eventually, and it improves the teamwork of your staff or something. Like that's not
good fact.
That was the second challenge is how are we going to do the data science so that we can prove that we're saving the hotel more than they're spending with us on a consistent and extremely reliable basis? So those were the two major technical challenges.
We'll stick with the second one for a second because it's really fascinating. What you want is for people to appreciate the value that this thing is providing consistently and concurrently with the value that's being provided. This is sort of the classic piece of why people they want recurring revenue because it's valued more highly by people like me. But also if you can match your cash flows with what is appreciated by the customer, then it sets you up or it could set you up anyway, for a good long-term relationship. Well, how has that worked out in practice? I just want you to sort of take us inside the conversations with, look, we're going to give you this thing for free. And then your deal is we're going to split the savings down the middle. We're going to have you benchmarked. And then we're going to split the savings down the middle according to that benchmark, which is what a lot of people say they're going to do. And then basically no one does because of a variety of different reasons. Like, why do you think you've been able to kind of get there?
We just don't give up. I mean, we have a really stupid passion for what we do as a team. And I'm saying I'm including my co-founders, Ian and Priya, and everyone that we've worked with. The more technical answer, the more substantive answer, we are offering a shower head as a service, right? So that's kind of the entrepreneurial or marketing economic offering. We have a pipeline a data pipeline that works very similar to the way your utility bill works. And so if you think about the economics of this, everyone trusts their utility bill, or 99% of people trust their utility bill implicitly. Like how often, Tom, are you honestly looking at your utility bill? How many years has it been? Do you even know how much you pay?
And I have Connors and they are comically big. And so I only look at them if I want to get really angry.
That's right. And so, but you get that utility bill, I guess, mailed to you, or you could log in or whatever every single month. It's unimpeachable. I mean, they show you how much you've used and they say, this is the rate. It's a metering technology. There's some great shining lights in our industry like Badger Meter who've made a century-long, massive Fortune 500, company out of just metering technology. To me, metering is hardware as a service before there was hardware as a service. That's the basic pitch there. That's the economics or the business setup for our shower head as a service. We give the hardware to the hotel owners for free. So if you've got a 300-room hotel with 300 crappy low-flow shower heads that are 15, 20 years old, and ShowerStream comes along, it's, hey, now you have 300 luxury, high-quality, high-gloss hotel shower heads that your guests are going to love, and you get all of that hardware for free. And then we're going to charge you $10 per month per room. So this will send any procurement person, give them a little bit of a heart attack. But we explain that just like a utility bill, we meter every drop of water that we save. So when our valve is closed, it's almost like a reverse utility bill. When our valve is closed, we know exactly how long it's closed for. We know the exact cost of the energy to heat that water, the water and sewer utility costs for it. We've been able to build a completely end-to-end automated data pipeline that essentially goes from the point of collection, data collection, meaning on the shower, we're measuring the drops of water, all the way to generating what looks like very similar to a utility bill that we send to our customer every single month that shows them exactly how much they saved. And we guarantee it's going to be more than we're charging you. And every single month at every single property, over 150,000 unique showers taken so far, we've dramatically exceeded that minimum bar. We're going to save you more than $10 per room per month. We typically come in at $25, $26 of savings per room per month. So the hotel nets, $10 or $15, improved profitability just on the utilities alone. And remember from our discussion earlier, the utilities are just a small piece of the overall value proposition, which is a little harder to measure. which is all the preventative maintenance for stopping these guys from running their shower for 5 days, for Christ's sake. We're still working on how to more effectively monetize that for all of the investors that may be listening.
This notion of reliability that you alluded to in terms of like Gen 1, right? Just, okay, stuff off the shelf. Oh, that didn't work. I sort of have already brought this up, but I think it's such an interesting and very dangerous operating environment because you are interacting with a customer at the point that they least want to be interacted with. When you have got up and you're about to get into your morning shower, if anything doesn't work, you have maximum propensity to be a massive pain in the ass to the person who owns that hotel, right? You are the worst version of yourself. Inserting yourself into that equation of people at their worst at the time where they do not want to be interrupted, and they definitely don't want their experience messed with something that they take so much for granted and rely on so much as their shower, especially when it's kind of like in a hotel and it's meant to be kind of like a nice experience. Talk to us about how you thought about reliability. And I just want to get a bit more into the physical work you had to do and the iterations you had to do to get up to reliability, which essentially kind of has to be total, right? The bar is extremely high for your engineering. I've always loved that you were able to see and then go for and then surmount that barrier, because it's like, in one other way, why would you want to get involved with a person at that time? That sounds rubbish. We shouldn't do that at all. I want to know more about how you got to something that was as good as it absolutely had to be, given the downsides from the point of view of your customer as regards their customer.
The first thing that I will say, so my co-founder Priya has a PhD in behavioral economics, and the first thing she'll tell you is that trying to change consumer behavior is extremely hard and fraught with peril. So the first design...
Give me a will. No thanks.
Exactly. So the first layer...
They will if they're miserable, but this is water coming out of a kind of a plastic box with holes in it. Like, no one's miserable. It's a relatively bad shower experience, like whatever. Then you're not going to get people to do anything different.
That's right. So the first layer of reliability here is designing the thing to be non-intrusive. It's not a nanny telling you to turn off the water when you're done using.
Like beeping once it's hot.
Right. There's nothing about the device that's even subtly political. It doesn't touch anything. That it's a beautiful luxury shower head. And if you've been an economy hotel guest and you're used to these crappy, low flow, tiny 1980s things.
Testify, Greg.
And you just look at the device, the way it looks is high quality luxury. It starts there. And with the basic product design and deeply thinking through how guests interact with their showers. The second thing from a technical standpoint is understanding from like a algorithmic implementation standpoint, understanding that in every case, we have to bias towards guest satisfaction. That means we may not save every single drop of water algorithmically that we could, because our goal, and we've achieved it, not a single guest complaint in 150,000 unique showers at the military, at multiple hotel brands who shall remain nameless, not a single guest complaint. And it's not like we've got our fingers in our ears. In fact, every time we're telling the front desk staff, if anyone even has a question, we want to know about it. We're like your eager beaver entrepreneurs with clipboards there. We want to hear everything the guests have to say about our device after they use it. You can imagine, as a computer scientist, it's an interesting challenge and it can be achieved algorithmically, assuming the risk for us early on is, well, will there be enough savings there that we can bias in favor of improving guest satisfaction while leaving some savings on the table? Or are we going to have to squeeze these guests to get enough savings? And I think that was just an R&D risk that we kind of had to take. We had penciled in, if there's 20% shower water savings, there should be enough here economically. And I think that we were just kind of fortunate in the sense that there's a lot more waste occurring at these hotels than we could have ever imagined when we first started. So the use cases now are just kind of doubling on themselves. So
yeah, no, it really does. It really does. I mean, and the other thing that makes me think of is that you've done a really good job of keeping your initial kind of pilot clients there and interested while you have come up what has actually proven to be an enormously challenging design and manufacturing problem. You're there now. You've got, as you said, 150,000 unique showers. You're in 5 different hotel buildings. You're through it, and it's a question of scaling up now. But can you talk about the relationship management side of that as you were still going through R&D and you had to go through the steps that you needed to ensure the product was there so it didn't interrupt with the guest side of things? But that poses a relationship problem. Could you talk us through how you dealt with that?
In one way, it turned out to be much easier than we expected. And then in another way, it has been a challenge. So first, the easy way, the thing that surprised us, all we wanted to do early on was just like sneak into the smallest mom and pop hotel we could with no visibility because we were really worried our device wasn't going to work very well on the first try. So we did. We just went to local hotels, said, hey, can we try this thing in your hotel? And they would say, yes, of course, but you need to talk to our franchise rep. And it's like, oh, okay. So then we would talk to the franchise rep and they would say, oh, wow. Okay, well, you need to talk to, my director of engineering, and we just got a VP of sustainability. Let's put you in front of them. It's like, oh, okay, great. And then we meet with the mid-level or the upper level managers. They say, okay, well, let's just bring in the VP of procurement and the CEO and one more. I mean, this happened like basically 5 times in a row at 5 major hotel brands that we just were trying to sneak in. And we literally are ending up in the top of downtown Chicago skyscrapers meeting with top executives. And so that was the easier part. That surprised us. That was just the early stage customer discovery. We had probably picked the right target segment because that was happening. But then the hard part was, okay, we meet with the CEO. The CEO gives us a green light. The thing that made me the most nervous in those sort of upper executive meetings was that I always said, look, we're a startup. We're not IBM. We're not Apple. You're looking at the entire team and there might be 2 of us. There might be 3 of us sitting there. So please be patient with us. And thank you for your support. That helped. But once the CEO greenlights a wild project and then delegates it back to the appropriate, middle manager, whoever that might be for the organization, it might be sustainability, it might be engineering, it might be procurement or operations, they're happy to work with us. We don't have a mid-manager trying to run our deal uphill and worried about if he's going to be embarrassed. No, the CEO has already greenlit this thing. And so now, we give the busy mid-manager a call on a Friday afternoon, and he's happy to hear from us because this is a cool, exciting project that he gets to work on. And that's been harder as the time has gone on. Not everyone is as patient and persistent and passionate about our problem domain as we are. And so how do we, over time, we don't have enough devices to satisfy our customers, all of the different customers at once. We had to pick and choose where to start, who to service first. That has been challenging. My team is more engineering focused than marketing focused. And so we just did our best to find people that understand marketing, that understand the difference between a drip campaign and taking someone to lunch or that kind of thing. So we've done our best to retain these relationships, especially the hardest ones have been the brands that have been waitlisted. So I don't have any killer silver bullet for other entrepreneurs on how to do that.
Well, it's actually really helpful to know that actually just that having that kind of covering fire or the kind of the umbrella effect of this coming in from the top down versus bottom up is an interesting one. As you're right, not everyone can do that and have that kind of like latitude. But I think you really, maybe you sell yourself a bit short about the kind of quality of it.
One thing I do think that the earliest stage entrepreneurs can do, whether they're interested in water or anything, is when your idea is in the idea stage, keep iterating until you find that pattern in terms of target segment or product design, until you find the customer saying, yeah, I'm going to buy it and 10 others are going to buy it. I mean, everyone knows as an early stage entrepreneur, no one wants to tell you the truth. They're going to lie to you because they see a sparkle in your eye and you're passionate or whatever. You got to take everything that you're told in the earliest stages with a grain of salt. But I do think very, very early on, you can find a demand driver that is powerful enough to drag your team through the entrepreneurial marathon, which is hardware startups.
Absolutely. It's the marathon that is also a sprint, which is
marathon with a lot of sprints.
Well, a marathon with a lot of sprinting in one of it. I mean, you've mentioned your team a bunch of times. Wonderful bunch of people, super smart. But you have also chosen to be extremely lean, which is great. It really has been so phenomenally effective because you've had this kind of, whether it's implicit or explicit, like insistent that we've got to get to product market fit. We've got to get to product market fit before we can like load things on. And you're now at that fascinating juncture where you're kind of there. Like if you were to dump 15 million on this thing, you really could go through a lot of hotels really quickly. Just walk us through the logic and the trade-offs of essentially doing what has at times felt a lot like a kind of a bootstrapped model. What has that felt like for you as an entrepreneur?
It felt like passion in both senses of the word, suffering and giddy excitement. This is just, Steve Jobs 101. And so cliche, I apologize, but I think that you've got to be passionate about what you're doing. And in the water space, I think that's not what I'm talking about. I think we're all passionate about water and the big vision, especially that you're working on, Tom, at Burnt Island. That's actually not the passion I'm referring to. I mean, this is just what I would work on if I wasn't being paid. Don't tell any of the backers or supporters that. Okay. I mean, but it's just, it's just what I love to do. It's what my co-founder Priya loves to do. It's what my other co-founder Ian loves to do. And what is it that they're doing that they love? It's different. I don't think all of my co-founders love kind of having a captive audience and doing kind of the fundraising pitching like I do. I don't think all of my co-founders love writing code like I do. I think you have to literally be passionate about what it is you're doing. That way, I would wake up and work on this if it weren't funded. What else would I work on? It's kind of the best idea that I have. So
it's so great. And you're at such an immensely exciting juncture, because this has now become, I mean, literally in the last 3 months, this has just become really real, really real. I don't actually think it's super helpful to say that there are more showers than Android and iPhone users. It's kind of amazing. If you were just to take a realistic proportion of the US hotel market, what would you be pulling down per month? Just give us an idea of how big this business can get.
Yeah, I mean, there's 33 million branded hotel rooms, US based branded hotel rooms with brands most people have heard of. It's a massive market.
$330 million a month in potential revenue for it.
We can get to 100 million in ARR just from our 5 customers alone, like the 5 hotel brands that we've gotten executive green lights from. That's not even saturating. That's like with 30% penetration rate. So it's a massive market. There's a lot of hotels. There's also a massive opportunity to do something great. In other words, we can divert over a gigaton of CO2 emissions. Again, because there's a heating component here, and then all of the energy that goes on the back end of water. So there's a massive environmental impact opportunity. So things like the Hoover Dam are really impressive. You look at them and look at all that water. I mean, just like 100,000 shower heads, and you've got 5 or 10 Hoover Dams. This is something that places like the DOE that are typically looking at big industrial projects, I think they're amazing. And I support all of that. But I also, from an impact standpoint, I think it's important to look at things that are so embedded in human life that if we can get them right and scale them, the impact is through the roof. And then in terms of as an economic proposition, just in our initial target market, but not even just with our existing pilot customers, they're happy. We've done pilot customers. They're waiting on us to get delivery. I think 100 million in ARR in 3 to 5 years is very possible. We've been lean for a while. And I think that's important for hardware startups. If you look at some of the best like Nest or iRobot or some of those trajectories, not everyone has Tony Fadell like Nest, but maybe iRobot is a better example.
You get that guy.
This is a bit of a lesson, maybe, or lesson learned for us that may or may not be helpful for others, is do the R&D that has a chance to make an impact, and you can get grant funding. That's helped us survive without too much dilution and remain lean, even as a hardware startup, and we have really high capital needs. But as long as you're doing some kind of R&D that has some significant impact, you need to make an R&D plan for how you're going to overcome those technical hurdles. And if you have to write down that plan anyway, well, why not submit it, get a SIBR, get a R&D grant. And even if they decline your R&D grant, well, you've written down your plan and you've gotten some expert feedback. So you're one step closer to your goal anyway.
Absolutely. I think it certainly resonates with what we're doing at Burnt Island, but I think it's just been so fun to watch you work. And I think the next 6, 12, 24 months are going to be lights out. It's going to be really fun. And you create many virtual Hoover Dams.
Absolutely. And I think to your point, this is the turning point. In fantasy basketball, you typically don't want the rookie. You want the guy going into his 3rd year. I think in hardware startups, it takes 7 years to become an overnight success. So I do think a note to the investors, you want to look for that inflection point with the teams that have grinded through to produce a defensible moat, a big draw on their value proposition. And of course, we've made so many mistakes. We're going to make more, but have at least demonstrated that, we're never going to give up because we're just passionate about what we do.
Yeah, you got to delete a shitload of, excuse my French, but water and energy use. And it's awesome.
Thank you, Tom.
We've come to the time for our closing question that we ask all our guests. What is the single most important piece of advice for future and aspiring water entrepreneurs?
I've already said it. You have to be passionate about what you do. But I think that I can add more to that because it's not always trivial to determine what it is you're passionate about. And so what do you love to do? I recommend doing that. That may sound really trite or really cliche, but it could help at the early stage, but it can help in later stages as well. As founders, we're not great at everything, and there's too much to do. You've got to look for co-founders and teammates that fill in for your gaps. This is interesting, Tom, so I want to throw this back on you a little bit. One of our recent investors really shocked me with a lot of data on the surprising efficacy of gender diverse teams. I look at Priya and myself, I look at you and Christine and the team at Burn Island. There is no way, like me and my co-founder, Ian, we would have made a shower head that looked like a video game controller if it wasn't for Priya. So with that, I could go on, but I want to ask you the same, about the challenges and pitfalls, but also the amazing rewards of gender diversity and other types of diversity on the team. But that's my one piece is be passionate about what you do and follow it from there and be true to yourself and true to your passion. Put one foot in front of the other and good things will happen.
It's taking you to a really great spot. What a cool journey to be able to follow you along on. And as I say, I'm so excited about the impact and kind of financial outcome, obviously, that's going to come from you putting these things to work because they are going to be invisible and so impactful as a result of your very, very thoughtful design, business model, tenacity. And really, I congratulate you. Thank you so much for coming on the Fundamental Molecule.
Thank you, Tom. I couldn't have done it without you, and I had a great time. So I really appreciate the invite.
Cheers, sir.